Matthew Zia. I'm directing a production of Rice by the other person on the screen.
Right, for me. So I'm Michele Lee. I've written the play Rice that Matthew is directing.
Yeah. Cool. I always enjoy these conversations because I'm here having my breakfast coffee, and I imagine you're moving towards some sort of nightcap.
Oh yeah. Yes, last time we spoke, I was having a whiskey, but then I thought, oh no, that's quite unprofessional. So no, I'm just having some water with lemon. So it's very yes, it's very it's very professional now.
Yeah, I thought it was just as professional before with the whiskey, to be honest.
Really? Oh, good. I'll put some vodka in.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock or something, isn't it? I mean, we should probably start, I guess, somewhere around why, maybe. Why? How did you come to write Rice? And more importantly, why?
Yeah. So Rice is a play that ostensibly is a two-handed play between two female actors, two female actors of color. So I in saying that, I guess that was part of the starting point for me in writing the play, kind of thinking about my friends who act and who are women of color, over here in Australia, and going, oh, what would be cool roles that they could play, where they would have a versatility of acting and the virtuosity in the range. So that was part of the impetus to have a world that was peopled by, on the stage, that the bodies on stage we're not white people, we're not men, but the characters also like traversed a range of identities, and that the two bodies on stage would kind of jump between and transform across the different roles. So in some ways, like that as an offer to actors was part of the starting point for writing it. And then I guess thinking about the content, so a story about two people who become friends in a workplace. There's someone who's like a white collar worker, and the other person is cleaning their office. And they become friends, in I guess the conceit of storytelling. I was kind of attracted to one person being like the primary role that they play is they're a Chinese woman cleaning the office of a young Indian corporate hotshot. And I wanted to write a play too that had women of color, people of color, but the story wasn't about like Chinese people, the Chinese community, I guess, or the Indian community, which was something that I recognized in the Australian landscape, that when there were stories that perhaps centered more the experiences of ethnic or minority communities, it tended to tell the story as a story about the family unit or the community unit, which of course is true and is complex and beautiful and delicious, but I wanted to move away from that. So it was important that they weren't related to each other, essentially.
Yeah, and which is interesting because for me, I guess, like there's a number of reasons I'm interested in it, but a huge part of it is their relationship. And whilst they're not related to each other, they're kind of, I don't know, I don't really want to give too much away, of course, but they attempt or appear to fill gaps in each other's need at points, almost like a kind of maternal relationship.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, they do kind of form proxies for each other, which I guess speaks to living in cities where you find different types of community, but they do feel like similar to the family unit. Like there might be an elder, there might be someone in need of wisdom and mentoring, and there is that dynamic there in this friendship, which is family-like without being biologically family-like.
Yeah. And for me, just to kind of put out there, the real interest is one, the theatricality of it, which I'm discovering on a day-to-day basis, just how dynamic this play is. The page 36, we talk about page 36 all the time, because Sarah Lamb, who for most of the play plays Yvette, does a kind of semicircle around the stage in one fell swoop, and in that time she's played Tom, Graham and Gretel Patel, line. So the demands on the actors are just huge as well, aren't they? It's like really a bit of a fizzy challenge for actors.
Yeah.
to be able to give the physicality of another location, varying
Yes.
ethnicities, different accents, whilst also delivering this story and returning back to
Yeah.
the central character each time.
Yes, and of course you'll pull it all off with aplomb, and I hope it will be magic.
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
It's
That's the
always the
plan. That
plan.
all these names you mentioned, by the time we experience page 36 on the stage, it will be seamless.
Yes.
And it would have been hard to imagine it with more actors is the plan.
Yeah. And but this is what I love about it. But in a way, I don't know, and maybe this is a bit complex, but the demands of the play, in a way, really limit who can play the parts, because of the expectations around age, ethnicity,
Yeah.
history, and access to particular characters and relationships. Which again is a challenge, which I think we are brilliantly rising to.
Yeah, yeah. Do you mean like in some kind of crude ways, does it mean like for the challenge for the actors is how they kind of locate themselves in the characters that are like least like them, or?
I guess so, because I think it's something that I mean, let's be blunt. I think it's something that Asian, East Asian, Southeast Asian uh, actors haven't been asked to do very often. They've been asked to play stock characters, which means that expansiveness of a reach to voice a Russian character, to voice a Caucasian older academic businessman. They're kind of the muscles that haven't been worked so often, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's obviously there's a truth, in your context, and same here in Australia as well. But I don't know. I guess there is a tradition of, like, I know sketch comedy, and certainly that's a space where you do see like people of color kind of flexing their muscles too, where they are. But I guess there's a difference between sketch and also landing like the emotional truth and the roundedness with the swiftness that the text is kind of asking the performers and the team and the audience kind of like go along with.
And I guess that's it, isn't it? Again, in your invitation to actors to come and inhabit this world, there's the request that they inhabit full-bodied, 3D, emotionally true and rich characters that have to be drawn with such detail, I guess, on the page and on the stage.
Yeah. And I was thinking the other day when I was sent through the possible touring schedule, and I saw a lot of options there, but mostly I was thinking, okay, from this point when the actors first step on stage to when they might kind of last step off the stage, I did think, I wonder what they'll discover in that time, and maybe they need that length of time to kind of plumb the depths of like what is possible. And I hope I think that it was staged here in Australia 4 years ago, and I know it sounds obvious, but certainly by the last performance there was that kind of expected ease. But but they didn't have as many shows as this production might have. So I'm really curious to see where it might relax in, and where for me too, to be able to reflect on like, okay, that's a really sweet spot, that in a way, in a simple way, that works better perhaps for me to kind of take into like, the next pieces of writing or the next kind of experimentations I might want to do that resemble or kind of riff off what I was aiming for in this text.
Yeah. I was thinking, there's a line in the play that really strikes me, and I guess this is part of the work I'm trying to do with ATC, and in all of our recent collaborations with the Orange Tree, actually, we've been exploring migrancy and what it is to live in a place that is not your native land, I guess. And there's a line that Gretel Patel says, who's the one of the ministers out in India, And she says, how can a civil servant best serve, you know, their constituents if they have a disconnect with their land?
Mm.
And I can't help but feel she's saying to Nisha, what are you doing here? You're not Indian, you know, you're disconnected from your land. And I wondered if how that kind of registered for you. As you know, certainly something I feel with my own kind of Jamaican heritage, which is kind of a distant idea that I only understand through my father, who lives here in England.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a tricky position to negotiate in the Australian context, where I think there's some interesting and kind of useful language that I've seen emerging, probably even since I wrote Rice, around kind of like the settlers of this nation that aren't the Indigenous people, that aren't the First Nations people, and who aren't, you know, the British, who aren't like descended from, you know, the kind of that First Fleet lineage, like people like me, where of course it's not this binary of like you don't belong here, but then our sense of belonging, of course, is steeped in like that violent colonial history. So I think for migrants in a nation like Australia, and you know, maybe there are similarities in the UK context. What does it mean to belong on land that has its own history, and particularly in a land that has like a First Nations, like a rich history? I mean, yeah, what's the rebuttal? Like, what do you say? Like, I guess there's not so much to say in response to, you know, what Gretel was saying to Nisha in that moment, because yeah, like I locate myself in Nisha in ways of like that. What is my place? Where am I belonging? And it's, you know, it changes every day, and you continue to negotiate it. Like, I've certainly had that experience of like the going back. I think for migrant people who have been raised in a culture that's different from the culture and the land that their parents were raised, like what does it even mean to go back, when that origin is connected to you, of course, but you know, it hasn't informed your experience. So yeah, I think you know, part of the Nisha story is emblematic of a lot of migrant experiences here in Australia, about that, yeah, that constant quest of like, what does it mean to belong in this place, this construct called Australia?
Yeah. Which again, you know, as an island nation, and the history of this particular island, of course, which has the empire the sun never set on and all of that stuff, just feels really poignant for us to be having those conversations about what is Englishness, what is it to exist here, particularly when people have been British elsewhere and then have arrived here and been mistreated or ill-treated whilst here. Talking about that, and I guess those communities that these two characters come from, exist within, or sometimes against, would it be fair, Michele, to say that they are both in some way disparaging at points about their own ethnic groups?
Yeah, and you know, isn't that just, you know, part of living with a dominant paradigm where you are taught to hate yourself at times, you know, like whether I think Yvette's probably got that stronger vocabulary that points to self-loathing, and it's, you know, we all wrestle with it. It's not always in the foreground, but yeah, I think when you have an experience that, but particularly visibly, you feel a sense of difference. I think that you internalize it, you vocalize it, and you learn to hate yourself and erase yourself at times, or diminish yourself or those like you.
Yeah, almost. I mean, sometimes as a defensive action, isn't it, to be self-deprecating?
Totally. And yeah, there is that get there before they get there first, before they get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the added layers of like age, or like lack of education, or gender as well. Like, oh, so many reasons to
Yeah.
to hate, but also to kind of resist and like fight against. And you know, I think Nisha and Yvette are both doing like their own forms of like struggle and protest and rebellion.
Yeah. And then with Nisha, I guess there's a thing that we're discovering, but actually last time you and I spoke, and you kind of popped into rehearsals through this medium of Zoom, talking about Nisha's meanness, and there was a question about Is she mean? Is she direct? What is it about her ambition?
Yeah. It was interesting because then, of course, I went away and like kind of connected with the script, and I wrote to you to say, "Oh, she's so mean," and I thought, what do I? And it's not entirely that thing about like difficult women or like, you know, the gendering of like the assertiveness of a young woman, but in some ways it kind of is. And I recall at the time I was like, oh, that's, that how do you kind of let the audience in with her at the start? Do you need to? Do you desire to? Do you? I thought it was just an interesting challenge and problem that somehow, I don't know, maybe it felt more pointed encountering it again this time, perhaps, than in the first its premiere season here in Australia and the development. And maybe that was about kind of being in it and being not as removed from it. But in some ways it is that thing about like the collision of like ambition, gender,
and expectation, I think, quite a lot of the time. But both of the daughters in this play seem to have some immense pressure on them from their mothers to do well. And in Nisha's case, it's Didima, so it's her grandmother, and more this sense of responsibility. And my family have come here. I've got to succeed on behalf of my family.
Yeah, and I guess migrants, the children of migrants, you do hear that thing around like trying twice as hard. So that's right. Those two younger characters, like there's like adrenalized, revved up energy of like pushing and propelling forwards, which is connected to expectation and responsibility. And also like, trying to do it on your own terms. So there's all these kind of elements that just kind of add to the pressure and the pace.
Yeah. And something about the dreams of the first generation migrant that can only be kind of revealed, achieved by the second or third generation migrant. That's what Nisha's carrying, isn't it? And then that's what Cherie's carrying, made in Melbourne daughter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and sometimes I wonder if more so for Nisha's character that she that kind of legacy, she strikes me as like wanting it more. Like, of course, it's complex and feeling burdened by it, but like Cherie, she seems to be, well, I guess politically she's just resisting. But that's at all angles: the generation, capitalism, society,
law school.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of it, Mum. I'm not getting involved.
I'm not doing anything of it. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. And who are they for you, I guess? Like, are they people you know? Are they people you've seen?
Well, so Yvette that the Sarah's playing, so my background's Hmong, Hmong, but for all intents and purposes, like, I appear as what we say here in Australia is just Asian, but anyway, I'm from like a small ethnic minority. But my mum was cleaning. She later in life, she didn't have like paid labor. Of course, she raised 7 kids and had a market stall. But later in life, when there was somewhat different responsibilities, she, through I guess girlfriends, like Laotian girlfriends, was cleaning government buildings in a different city from where I am. And then I was working a part-time, I had a part-time kind of office life, white collar office life. And I would be in, the kind of twilight hours that crossed over, like me working late and the cleaners coming in to do their allotted shifts. So they kind of stood in for like, I was like, oh, this could be my mom, or this is someone's mom or father, or like, their family to someone. And of course, yeah, no judgment on the work, but like it's not as well paid. And just that kind of disparity between like, oh, I'm doing a certain labor and it attracts a certain income. And I suspect it's more than what's happening here. So yeah, Yvette is in some ways like I connect to her through as an older Asian woman who is limited in her opportunities to my mum. And then Nisha, no, like she's not fortunately or not, she's not like my Indian friend from school or anything like that. Yeah, yeah, I remember saying in when I popped into the Zoom rehearsals that she, at the time of writing the play, in this white collar job, I was noticing the kind of the parachuting into like really senior leadership roles of like younger, highly competent female leaders. Like it's not in the corporate field, like a completely different field, but just that pattern. And I felt like I was noticing it across different sectors, like in the arts as well. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I guess it's that perennial like glass ceiling thing. But yeah, I was just noticing in close quarters a lot more young female senior leaders being entrusted and being, in a way, going pushed forward to go and have vision, conquer, do your thing.
Yeah. So I love that. Like just again as you say, that there are bits of you in there and bits of your mum in there, and I guess as a child of a migrant, it's just such a universal story, isn't it? In that it doesn't matter which location you're moving from, but the moment that you have to find a new home, discover a new home, there will always be some difference between your children and you, and what that is and how it is embodied. Just again thinking about Cherie, who's Yvette's daughter, the differences, and I don't know. She's quite harsh on her mum, and again,
and I think that is also a product of them only having each other, like that kind of the extremities of like emotions when but perhaps in a larger family, I don't know, I'm from a big family, that can kind of be diffused a bit. You can kind of locate the extremities of emotion or maybe secrete them diffuse them across family members. But when it's just the two of you, I think that can kind of add to the intimacy and also the intensity. So those like vicious words, I think, just might be easier to access because it's just the two of you. It's just been the two of you.
Yeah. And of course, you only ever see the gaps in that relationship when you're in it. You're not looking at everything that you're building together.
Yeah, totally. Like I think we've got a message now to wrap up.
We should wrap up then, shouldn't we?
We wrap up.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you what it was like. I don't know, maybe we should wrap up. But I've got one more question I really want to know, which is, what is it like having a premiere happening on the other side of the planet that you can only really access currently through this little box?
It's so many things. It's like it's humbling, and it's you said that you learn things and you chat to me, and like you similarly, like I'm loving hearing the way in which you're kind of approaching and this work as well. And I have to say, like I love it that this time around there's more people of color in this creative team. So yeah, there's a part of me that's like, oh, am I going to tune in to watch it? Do I really want to try and make my way over to see it? It would depend on how it's reviewed, maybe.
It really is brilliant. And again, it's when we talk about these plays, we talk about them in such serious ways, but it is hilarious at points as well. Some of those interactions, some of those relationships.
Oh yes, I forget about that. Yes, I think it's funny. Yeah,
it's really funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, super. Well, it's been lovely chatting, Michelle. I think we should wrap up, shouldn't we? And
all right.
go and get on with our days, or you should go to sleep or something. I don't know.
Yeah, go have dinner.